Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and today we're visiting with Tim Smith, and kind of a double blessing for us. Tim is the author of Donors Are People Too, Managing Relationships with Your Ministry's Major Contributors, and also is the Chief Development Officer of the soon-to-be-opened in November Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. Tim, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you. It's a real privilege to be with you today.
Well, we're delighted to have you on really both levels, because over your career, you're known as a leading expert in building the capacity of nonprofits with over 35 years of experience in administration, management, and fund development. You've held a variety of roles in executive leaderships for mega-sized organizations, including as serving as Chief Development Officer for Food for the Hungry, and now currently as the Chief Development Officer for the Museum of the Bible. You have extensive coaching relationships with the most influential pastors and leaders both in the church and the secular non-profit sector. Certainly important as the very backbone of organizations like ours, which are 100% donor supported. Our television program, our broadcast center, we do not sell advertising. We do not offer sponsorships. We are a media outlet which is devoted to one thing and one thing only, and that is the biblical worldview and the contents of the Bible, whether it be politics, headlines, heart lines, politics, doesn't matter. We're going to line up with the Word of God, and it's a challenge to have sponsors and advertisers that don't necessarily agree with your position and try to exert that kind of influence in policymaking. How have you, in your career, in helping to guide donor development and support for organizations, how have you navigated that very, very treacherous water?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think it all comes back to the calling and mission of the organization that we're working with. For several years, I was able to speak and consult probably 200 charities just in the U.S. and a few outside the U.S. And I think we bumped up against this from time to time. And I think at the end of the day, your mission has to drive your message. And when we walked in and worked with an organization, or the companies that I have been the Chief Development Officer for personally, currently Museum of the Bible, as you mentioned, my time at Food for the Hungry, and others along my career, I think the first thing we started is really defining not just a pithy kind of cute slogan of a mission, but a real core mission of your organization, and then taking that and letting that define your message. And I think in time that will help focus the right audience, that especially in the donor space, that is going to follow along with you and stay with you. And I think it eliminates some of those things that you're referring to. But yeah, we bump against it all the time. Yeah.
It's interesting that today we're watching Fox News or other organizations where individuals will say or do something or become exposed in some way, and the first response is how many advertisers pull back, what the revenue impact is. And it concerns me because I think that oftentimes that's happening in the pulpit. And there are biblical sermons and parts of the Bible that seem to be avoided, even though they're contained in the Word of God. But it would be pretty hard to drive down the street and see on the sign outside the church, join us for the next 7 weeks as we talk about the fallen angels and demons. See you Sunday morning. Or, those things that are very significant in the Bible, but don't fill the pew on Sunday and certainly don't help you meet the budget.
Right. Or even worse, for someone in my business, come hear us talk about sacrificial giving or money and that type of thing. It's all those things that are detractors. And yeah, I think it's, I've lived in this space. I started in ministry, really ministry marketing and fundraising when I was 19 years old, and I think the problem that most of us get into early on is to try to bucket and build a kind of an affinity list that all organizations fit this particular mantra. And I think for me, it's always been to look at every organization, whether it's a church, whether it's a synagogue, whether it's a parish, whether it's a nonprofit organization. There's a very unique DNA to that organization. There's a unique DNA where we may all say we are doing X, but there's a way that happens within the culture and the DNA of that organization. And so I think as leaders, our job is to really understand who we are and why do people listen to us or watch us or follow us or get involved in our causes. And when I was in the compassion work at Food for the Hungry, there were some people that they loved God, they loved the Bible, but for some reason they had not flipped that switch of eradicating poverty, whether that's spiritual poverty, physical poverty, educational poverty, and we had to understand that those are not individuals that are gonna run with us.
Right.
And so I think trying to hone back into what is our cause, what is our movement, and what are we about, and that and I think that's the substance of the things that I write about and the things that I try to coach leaders on is just staying true to that core. Otherwise, I think that's where we get off track and we mess up our own message at times because we like that shiny new object, and so we chase it, we try to grab it, and all of a sudden, your own base comes back and says, "Are you really on mission? Are you really on your message?"
Of course, Scripture says, "Without a vision, the people perish."
Right.
I found it very interesting that when I was leading a congregation, I would have couples come in and we could counsel about anything. Their sex life. We could talk about their most intimate details of their marriage. But the minute you mentioned tithing, the minute you mentioned finances, that was the taboo subject. That was the one that said, up until now, we were very comfortable talking to you, but now you've crossed the line. Now you're meddling. Now you're inserting yourself into something that really, and in fact, I'm sure you've quoted this, I quoted it, many have, that God mentions money more than prayer in the Bible. So it's not that it is a relative kind of thing. They're both significantly important in understanding a kingdom-minded growth, a kingdom-minded advancement. The gospel cannot go out on the wings of pigeons and land and have a little message wrapped to its leg, hoping, or in a bottle with a cork thrown over and hope it lands upon the shore. The gospel has to go out using every medium and every vehicle available, and there are those things that cost in order to deliver the message. And from a ministry perspective, you are exactly right. Vision casting. Now, you're kind of preaching to the audience. I was the director of strategic marketing for Hewlett-Packard. I was their message man. I was the guy that built the strategic alliances by being the face of the message. Here's the vision, join and partner with us. So when I left them and came into full-time ministry, I knew there had to be a top-line vision, and that everything was built around the brand, the vision, the message. Who are you? What are you? Like our program, Revealing the Truth. We cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. That's what we do. It's clear, it's simple. We're not a news channel. We'll cover the headlines if they're relevant. We'll cover the stories that touch your heart if they're relevant. But always biblical truth. And that's who we are. And that's where the support comes in, because people want to hear an unbridled, unadulterated, unfiltered message with guests like yourself. They're going to talk about the most taboo subject of all, money.
Right. That's right.
So it's interesting. The title of the book that you wrote, Donors Are People Too, almost is a two-edged sword, because you and I are people too. Ministers are people too. We tend to not recognize the man behind the rabbi, or the man behind the pastor, the man behind the CEO. We all are people too, and our donors are people too. And there are those that the focus of their donor development is a neon sign that says, "We're here for your money." I built a synagogue here in Birmingham, Alabama, Messianic, and grew up in a traditional Jewish home, traditional synagogue, saw the brass plates all over the place, dedicated to Aunt Martha, dedicated to this person, dedicated to that person. And actually, when I was talking to the builder, I said, wouldn't it be hilarious if I had a neon sign over the ark that had a scrolling message that says, "This space available, your name here." And that's almost what we've become in this idea of donor development, of taking things that, you want to see your name in lights? Okay, it's $250,000. All right, you'll be on from Friday from 8 to 9:30, and then the message is going to change, like the stadiums. But that's not what feeds the people. That's not what makes them feel a part of the mission.
Right, right. Well, and donors are people too. One of the things that really motivated me to write that book was just that idea that as I've been in the fundraising space for 40 years, and my approach has been one of relationship and ministry over transactions and marketing, and it served me well. We've been able to help a lot of organizations. Today we're doing the most robust project of my career in working with Museum of the Bible, and the same principles that I wrote about in that book that helped me when I was raising maybe $20,000 are still working today in a $1 billion project that we're working on today. And so I think that the concept for me really came home, and it's probably in the early 90s when I was a young fundraiser. And my approach was basically to run around town and shoot the same ask to everybody that I saw. Will you give me $1,000? Will you give me $1,000? Will you give me $1,000? And I ended the year and I raised the money that was necessary to meet the budget. I was exhausted, and I'm sitting at a coffee shop in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm looking at all these cards that I spread out on the table of people who promised $1,000 but didn't give the money. And so and I write about this in my book, and just on a whim, I decided to write each of them a personal note, not ask them for a thing. But I just said, listen, I wanted to tell you about the great year we just had, and you played a part. You prayed, you gave, I just gave them a short little note. Well, within about 3 weeks, there were 27 of those cards. I wrote 27 notes that January morning. Within about 18 days, or within about 3 weeks, 18 of those individuals responded with a gift. "Oh, Tim, I'm sorry, I forgot. I got busy. I should have given you this earlier. And my takeaway from that was that they're real people. That they're like me. You know, sometimes I forget to pick up the phone and call one of my kids who are away at college, or to talk to somebody, you know, that just needs to hear from me. And it just taught me they're real people. And my belief in mentoring and coaching people needed to take over my donor relationships.
It's relational. All of this is about relationship. The world of nonprofits, the world of fundraising, people are being pitched at all the time. The whole concept of the do not call list was birthed out of all of this overwhelming amount of ask. Everyone's asking, and people are being bombarded with messages that we're tuning them out, we're filtering them out. They've lost some of the compelling, becoming a part of something larger than yourself. That's what projects like your Museum of the Bible. It's a project larger than yourself. The organizations, when they bring me the number that 140 million children are starving around the world, and my $36 a month will feed 4, you almost feel like there's 146 million of them. Can I really make a difference feeding 4? Does that really do it? Okay, so now it's 145 million. The next ad should have a number reduced because am I making a difference? Is this an area where I have this pull, this tug, where I can make a real difference? And people, I think, have an inherent desire to want to make a difference, but we've overwhelmed them with opportunity, and we've put everything on a par with each other as being the most, you make your most impact if you'll do this, more impact if you do that. And is it really for us in the vision casting to make that pitch, or is it for us to get the message? Here's who we are and here's what we're doing. And it's almost an invitation. Would you like to be a part of that?
Yeah, right. And I think a real key with donors is, and mission of organizations is where do my passions as a donor intersect with what you do as an organization? Okay. So if I care a lot about evangelism, of reaching the lost, are you an organization that does that? So does that passion that I have intersect with that? Is my passion for distribution of the Bible and building platforms for we can strive to bring the Bible into today's conversation, does that intersect with something that you do? And I think when we find those intersect points, that's where donor engagement really escalates, because you're finding that connection point. I have a friend here in town who runs a great organization, a great charity. I've known him since I was a kid, and he calls me every year asking me to sponsor a table at his event. And I do that really because of our friendship, not because of my interest in his organization, because I'm not passionate about what they do. And so about 10 years ago, he called me one day and he asked me for a larger gift than just the table sponsorship. And I said no, because it just didn't fit. And he really pressed me on. I mean, it's the guy I used to play basketball with in high school. we go way back. And he says, I don't get it. He says, you give us so many projects, why not mine? He says, and I just had to tell him, I just don't care that much about what you're doing. I said, my table deal is because you're my friend. But, and he got very upset about that, and he struggled with that. But in our relationship, we were able to grind out that this was something that he understood, that he finally came to grips with the fact that he needed to really find people that were passionate about his core mission, his core vision. And so you find that alignment, you find that intersection where we come together. I'm kind of a Bible nut. I love the Bible. I like talking about the Bible. I like distributing Bibles. I like challenging skeptics about the Bible. I like creating places that really poke people in the eye about what they believe about the Bible and create even intense conversation at times. I like to deal with people who are believing that the Bible is old, it's dusty, it's irrelevant, it's not important today. And so people that dig that kind of stuff, they love what I do. And if they say, man, I just want to really, as you said, I want to spend the $36. I want to help those 4 children. And I've been in that space personally, and I've led funding campaigns for in that space. And but some people will just kind of reject what we're about sometimes, about building a stronger platform and mega voice for the Bible, because they really want to feed an impoverished child or help someone within the underprivileged communities of this country. So I think it's all about knowing your donor. It's all about knowing your people, and that's why that title to me was very, very important when I wrote the book, because of a concept, basic life connection for me is that people are important to God, and because of that, they need to be important to us. So when I was raising money, when I was young and raising money, and I didn't have this kind of philosophy, I didn't have this ideology, I just found it very unfulfilling and nearly quit many times within that industry. And it was really this concept of people first, donations second, that really helped me become a better fundraiser and do more for the causes and the movements that I was raising money for. So I think there's such a strong need for, whether you're a pastor, whether you're a rabbi, whether you're a priest, whether you're a director, an executive director, CEO of a nonprofit organization, or you're just trying to do good with your life and make a difference, is to try to lead people to places where they gain the greatest fulfillment in participation. And that's why I wrote the book, is to try to encourage organizations to really shift their thinking about how they handle. So many people in fundraising, they view us as fundraisers as, this is the image I think people always used to have, is that, you're twisting my arm, you got your foot on my neck, and I'll give you $10 just to get you to go away,
right.
To stop that. And I really had a passion 25 years ago to say, let's change that image. Let's change that, and let's bring authenticity into relationships. I feel that I've worked a lot with major donors in my career, and I find that really wealthy people are very skeptical. They're very distrusting of especially people like me. And so, how could I break through and gain their trust before I ask them to participate? And that's some of the stuff that I unpack in the book, is the cycle of the donor relationship and how to build trust and build confidence with donors. And I believe that money follows vision. It follows the passion of that donor. And so if we can really value them as people and embrace them as people, and before long, they're coming into your community of relationship, you're being invited into their community. You're helping one another with life events and things like that. And you're being drawn together more out of your shared passion and the authenticity that you have in your relationships. And fundraising then becomes like ministry. It's something that you're doing in the lives of others and you're cultivating. And I believe I'm a stewardship, generosity cheerleader, that if people can really embrace the calling of generosity in their lives, they're going to have greater fulfillment in their walk with God and in the causes that they're striving to address. And so, that's my personal mission. That's my personal calling. And I get to play that out because lots of organizations need money.
Absolutely. We're talking with Timothy L. Smith, author of Donors Are People Too, Managing Relationships with Your Ministry's Major Contributors. And he is now undertaking the largest project of his life, the Museum of the Bible, scheduled to open on November the 17th, 430,000 square feet, thousands of artifacts and rare books, a monumental undertaking, raising $1 billion with a B dollars to create in Washington, D.C., a living memorial museum of the Bible comparable to nothing like it in the world. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Tim about this project, set some expectations, build some excitement, and talk about what it is you've got going on with this great project of the Museum of the Bible. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our one-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and today we're talking to Timothy L. Smith, author of Donors Are People Too, but right now we're going to talk to him in his other capacity, and that is as the Chief Development Officer of the Museum of the Bible, a $1 billion project happening right now, just blocks from the U.S. Capitol, while the world is focusing on Russian intelligence and worldwide tours. Washington, D.C. is going to come into focus as the home of one of the greatest, most extensive museums of the Bible ever conceived. And you received the call to become the Chief Development Officer of this project. Tim, welcome back to the program.
That's right, Rabbi. It's the great privilege of my life to work on this project. I believe that everything I did throughout my career was preparing me for this day to help build this platform for the Bible. So I'm very honored. It's a humbling experience to be able to work for a project that's creating such a, really, I feel, a hallowed space for the Bible, and to honor this great, most banned book, the most burned book, the most popular book in the world. And it's a legacy project, and I'm very honored to be with you today, but I'm honored to work on this great project as well.
I think it's so incredible that in this politically correct day and age, that the vision to plant the Museum of the Bible in the heart of tolerance, First Amendment rights, it will be an edifice to the Lord, an edifice to the Bible, and probably the largest single slap in the face to atheism and to Marxism and to evolution and to every other doctrine that stands against the Bible. It's hard to compete with a 430,000 square foot building devoted to God's truth.
Yeah, it's very, very true. One of our core beliefs is that the Bible is a book of great power, and it can really stand on its own 2 feet. So, our mission at Museum of the Bible is to invite people to engage with this book. It's a very simple mission. We are seeing great partnerships emerging now amongst Protestant traditions, Catholic traditions, Jewish traditions, And our vision has really been that this would be a safe place for the strongest Bible advocate and the strongest Bible student to the biggest skeptic and doubter of the Bible. And we really welcome some of those folks that you just described. We welcome those who would really question, the validity of this book, the authenticity of this book, the history of this book. And the way we're going to present it is to really challenge people to maybe rethink what they might have brought into the building. And we're going to do it in great. We're going to have the greatest collection of artifacts around the Bible on our history floor. We're going to, through great creativity, tell the stories and the narratives of the Bible. One of my concerns today is there's a whole generation that doesn't know the difference between Moses and Noah,
right,
that doesn't know the difference between the Old Testament or the New Testament. And so how are we, we really took on a plan to very creatively tell these stories and the narratives of the Bible. And then probably my favorite part of the museum is our impact floor. And how has the Bible impacted our culture day by day? Our language, the healthcare system, the prison system. We even have an exhibit on the Bible's impact on fashion, and people are going to be blown away by how the Bible and the attire of the Bible era has actually impacted the fashion world today. We're going to have a exhibit on the Bible and science. We talk about evolution and some of these types of things. We're going to show the compatibility really between science and the Bible, not its differences, and really how God has really ordained so much of this. And so. And in essence, I think it's gonna challenge people to really say, well, I don't know if I believe that, and that's the environment we want. That's the floor. That's the floor I want to hang out on. I want to sit and drink coffee and listen to those debates and listen to that intensity. And we've put a lot of thought, a lot of planning and design into this project, so that people who might never walk through the doors of a church or come to your parish or come to your congregations of any type, we wanted to create a place where they would feel safe in coming in. So where else but in the City of Museums? We sit between two of the greatest Smithsonian museums that have been built in Washington, D.C. As you mentioned, we're 3 blocks from the nation's capital, 2 blocks off of the Washington Mall. And we will be the 3rd largest museum in Washington, D.C. when we open. And there's over 80 museums in Washington, D.C. today. So we believe that we didn't want to cut corners. We wanted to come in and not be considered, the little Bible museum down the road, but we wanted to be able to be on the level of the great museums, so that we could really draw that kind of respect and attention from the culture.
At what point did you get involved in the project?
Yeah, so that was about 3 years ago. I was very happy. I was a chief development officer at Food for the Hungry, great charity, working in 22 developing countries, not looking for another job. I was 57 years old, not interested in another transition, and a dear friend of mine called and asked me if I'd heard about this project, and I vaguely knew of it based on the patron that had actually helped get it started, but knew very little about it. Actually told him no, I don't think I'm interested, and he said, would you just go talk to them, because they're having a hard time finding someone who, kind of my experience level in fundraising, that could really come and take on such a large project. And I did that, and the short story is, sitting in Washington, D.C., it just hit me that this would probably be the greatest project that really brings together so many different stripes of faith and non-faith in our world to celebrate this book. And it just hit me that God had prepared me for this moment. And so I took the job. That was 3 years ago. I had one donor, a great donor. I had no database. and I had a several $100 million yet to raise, and so we launched out, and today our database is over 700,000 people that follow us every day, that get emails from me, that correspond with me on a monthly basis. We've got over 40,000 active donors today, and we're racing to what we say. We're racing toward the starting line, not the finish line. When that museum opens, that's the beginning. It's not the end of a project. It's the beginning of the project. And we're very thrilled to see how God has blessed us to this.
To kind of put this in a perspective that people can understand, 430,000 square feet, $1 billion, how many employees is it going to take to keep this operational?
Right. So the museum itself in Washington will probably have just under 200 employees. And we're going to do some different things. We're not going to keep the typical museum schedule. We're going to be open a little bit earlier in the day. We're going to stay open a little bit later at night. We have one of the most state-of-the-art theaters that we hope to run some kind of production every day that talks about the Bible or the impact of the Bible. It's Bible related. We want this to be a gathering place in the city, not just a museum. We don't want people just to come and observe and go away and then maybe come again, but to really come in and have an immersive experience about the Bible. And so, we have three key floors of the history, impact, and the narrative of the Bible. And we have we're a full curatorial museum, so we're studying today over 100,000 items in our collection and other collections that have been loaned to us to study. And so we've got a strong curatorial team. We have a tremendous staff of uniquely targeted leaders, from live docents to experts on papyrus to experts on some of the most ancient items in our collection. This is going to be probably the most technology-rich museum in the world when we open. We've been very intentional, investing millions of dollars so that when you come in, not only are you embraced with the history and the beauty and the long-standing nature of this book, but how we're presenting it to you. We're using the very latest in technology that'll actually be unveiled at this museum that's never been seen before. And then we're going to present it also in a creative way so that we are engaging people in a very immersive experience, and so that we're touching their senses in a way, and their emotions about the importance of this book. It'll be like there'll be no museum like it the day we open.
The goal is, of course, to memorialize the Bible and its impact on humanity from Genesis 1 to present day, and the foretelling of the future events that are to come. How do you perceive this impacting the Bible's relevance, its position, its perception in the world we live in today, where it is everything from poetry to mythology to prose to artistic interpretation to a book of myth and fable? What are you hoping?
Yeah, so our real objective is, let's bring the Bible back into daily conversation. We have generations now that are coming up that believe this book is irrelevant today. It's a dusty old book. I think I read somewhere that the average household in America has something like over 20 Bibles in it, or something like that. It's I think there's over 98% of homes. I think I saw a statistic not so long ago that have at least one Bible in their home. But yet, it's probably the most popular book that never gets opened. that never gets read in our homes as well. So how can we change that? One way is just to bring, how can we make it relevant in conversation today? So I think the way we want to address that is from a standpoint of engagement more than proselytizing. So our goal is not to, when you walk through the doors of the Museum of the Bible, our goal is not to proselytize you to a certain track of faith, okay? Whether that be a Protestant faith or a Jewish faith or a Catholic faith or any faith, just make your list. But rather have people really engage with this book. So through its history, we'll go all the way back and show Torah scrolls. We'll actually have a rabbi there who is creating a scroll, and we'll talk about how they overcome mistakes and how they have been able to secure that.
So you've hired a sofer, your very own sofer.
Yeah. And so, we're going to really be very true to the history and what can be proven, what can be shown in the history and the validity of this great book. And what we hope will happen is that, people will be challenged. We actually have a digital docent that when you walk in the museum, you'll be handed a tablet that fits in your hand. And you're able to design you're able to say, okay, I have 3 hours, and I love the Bible in America, and I love Judaica, and I want to see the New Testament theater. And then the docent will then design your tour for you that you can accept, or you can say, no, I'd rather just wander around myself. And then we have a new technology of indoor, kind of like an indoor GPS. It'll locate you in the building to within 4 inches of where you are. And so it'll take your tour, and maybe you'll come to the Gilgamesh tablet, one of the oldest contractual items in our collection. And you're enamored with that tablet, and you're standing there and you're reading and you're thinking about that. The docent, the digital tablet, it'll nudge you and say, Rabbi, if you don't keep moving, you're not gonna. Now you can shut that off, obviously, and say, leave me alone. But it's going to help you go through the tour, and it's also going to say, hey, I noticed that you've stayed here looking at this exhibit for a longer period of time. Would you like more information? And through each exhibit, we're going to have 5 levels of learning. So for just the casual person that wants to know a little bit about this, to the theological student, to the biblical student, and then you can tuck that information in a cart. So what we really want to do then is not just have an experience while people are in the building, and it's going to be a beautiful presentation. It'll be, there'll be nothing like it. But we want it to be a way that what you experience there, you can also take with you. You can walk away. So when you turn your tablet back in at the end of your tour, you might say, oh, I see here that you've selected, 17 different areas. Would you like us to print that for you, give it to you in printed form, or would you like us to email that to you? And then they email it to us, and they're in a relationship with us then to say where they can be asking questions, where they can be learning more. And so we want it just to be more than your grandmother's museum, where you just come and you wander around, you spend time looking for your kids, wonder where they disappeared to, but rather you're coming and having a very immersive experience that really we hope will stimulate a real love for this book, and that people will desire to know more about this book. And as they walk away, then it becomes part of their daily conversation. Have you been to the Museum of the Bible? Have you encountered the Bible in this way?
I think it's an extraordinary undertaking. Now, is there a Museum of the Bible Foundation? Is there an underpinning, sponsor? Is there an affiliation of any kind? Or is this an independent, freestanding foundation in and of itself for the sole purpose of the funding and the operation of the Museum of the Bible?
Yeah, the Museum of the Bible is totally funded by individual families and corporate donations. We have turned down any offer of federal funding. We are taking, we're taking no funding that we concerned ourselves would have an agenda attached to it. So it's really, it's really the average person that's giving as little as $15 or $20 or $30 a month, all the way up to people that are making multi-million-dollar donations for this organization. We're doing something very unique in the museum to reach out to really help this museum feel like it belongs to the masses of people. All museums have their, you mentioned this earlier about, putting your name on plaques and things. Right. And we have a little bit of that. We'll have a beautiful Jerusalem stone wall it's called the Wall of Honor for our most generous donors. But we had this crazy idea of how do we honor everybody, not just the people that are mega wealthy. And we created what we called the 1 Million Names Wall. And what it is, it's a wall where a person that gives any gift to the organization, they could give as low as $1. Now, I'm the fundraiser. I don't encourage a lot of those gifts. I want larger gifts. But we've had children that have said, "Here's my $1. Would you I want my name on that wall." And today already we have nearly 500,000 names already registered on that wall of people who've made that donation, and they've listed their family members. And it's more of to me, it's more of a petition than anything else. Right. Because what it'll be is a way for someone to say, I stand with this book. And when you come to the museum, and for me, I've got my name on there, my wife's name, I've got my parents' name in memorial, I've got my 6 children's name on there. And so then my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, for years to come, will be able to come and say, we stood with the Bible back in 2017 when this place first opened. And it's just one of the unique ways that we want this to feel like it belongs to the people, it belongs to the kingdom, and people have a sense of ownership. And so when you take a lot of funding for a cause that has strings attached to it, right. They would say, oh, well, if you take our money, you can't take this position on the Bible, you can't take that position on the Bible. Then it defeats our mission, because we want people to engage. And then we believe the Bible is strong enough to empower and to influence. And it doesn't need us to always make its argument. And so what we try to do is create that place where people can come in, and even people of different stripes of faith that could come and say, well, listen, this is what I believe this exhibit is really meaning, say, to a Protestant person, right. A Jewish person, or a Messianic, or a Catholic, But our job is to create the opportunity for that, but not really try to drive the mission of that, because we want the doors wide, the tent large, and hoping that really millions and millions of people will come in.
Well, it's just an incredibly exciting, touch my heart kind of mission that we would have in Washington, D.C., a 430,000 square foot museum, world-class museum that will draw visitors from all over the world to be exposed to the Bible and to what God is truly doing in this day. As right there in our nation's capital, it becomes unmistakable that God was the foundation of America, God is the foundation of America, and God will continue to be the foundation of America. Tim Smith, author of Donors Are People Too, Managing Relationships with Your Ministry's Major Contributors, and Chief Development Officer for the Museum of the Bible, scheduled to open on November the 17th of this year. We would encourage you to follow along with their development campaign. You can find Tim at www.timothylsmith.com, and the Museum of the Bible website
is museumofthebible.org.
museumofthebible.org. Tim Smith, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us both these great stories. We look forward to seeing you. I look forward to meeting you right there at the museum, as maybe you'll let us and our crew in, and we can help promote the great work that you're doing.
it's a date. We'll look forward to that.
Thanks so much. God bless, and thank you for being with us. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to connect with Bulgaria and bring you a conversation with our good friend Nikola Dimitrov in just a minute. We'll be right back.